I remember being in New York, just in my apartment, laying in my bed with a 6-month-old, thinking, how am I going to do this? Um, those were some dark times.
Hey, Avanlee Christine, CEO and founder of Avanlee Care. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
So this is one of the first episodes of a new podcast series called The Honest Founder. And the goal here is to understand the work that you're doing, but then also really pull back the curtain on your journey and not just talk about the high points and the big successes that you've had, but also some of those valleys that make you who you are and actually can lead to a new and better company and can be major turning points for a founder personally. So I appreciate you being willing to go through that with me today.
Absolutely. Happy to take you through
So,
through the valley.
so every founder, every CEO has a roller coaster journey, and I know you have been no exception. You've had your highs, you've had your lows, but just get our listeners caught up on what Avanlee Care is. What is this business that you started?
Yeah. So the business that we started is we are working to leverage in caregiving families and formal caregivers into essentially the healthcare system. And the importance of doing that is we have a very rapidly growing aging population, and family caregivers provide $600 billion a year of unpaid care. And so, bridging the gap between us over here caring for mom, her health plan, the providers, everyone doing managing her care plan, just bridging that fractured communication ultimately helps improve outcomes over long periods of time for people trying to age in place at home. So that is what Avanlee Care does in a nutshell.
And when did you found it? How long has it been? You've been on this journey?
5 years ago, we found it.
5 years ago. Is the company what you thought it would be like a month before you launched it?
No. No. Uh, it started as you know, an app for my mom, who was starting to be the primary caregiver for my grandmother again, and her adult siblings were all trying to I thought, all right, I'll build an app that will allow for my mom to get groceries and meds and help grandma with her medication reminders. And then as we built out the platform, as we partnered with retailers and pharmacies, it became something so much more. And then we pivoted, which most founders do pivot a couple times. And we pivoted into health plans based on the data that we had and what we knew what we did really well for these families, which ultimately provided value to health plans and healthcare systems.
What was the first moment when you felt, we're going to get to the tough stuff, but what was the first moment when you felt like, you know what, this is going to work? We're taking off, like a partnership, some sort of feedback. What was the first really high moment?
We accomplished for a small little company out of Montana. That's where we're headquartered because it's where my co-founder and I are from, but I'm here in Manhattan. When we were able to build what it seemed like a very impossible integration with the online pickup and delivery with Walmart, those APIs, we were kind of their first test company. It was during COVID. It took a long time to do, and really credit to my co-founder and our dev team. They did a lot of fancy footwork around that. And when the first order came through Avanlee Care, I I went to watch it be delivered because Walmart was delivering groceries through Avanlee Care, and that was available in all 50 states. And it was just like being in the trenches for so long, and then it worked, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this feels amazing." But of in the 5 years, I've probably had 2 or 3 of those moments. That's it. It's
Mm.
a
How
huge
long,
handful.
how long, how long do they last before it's like the next challenge?
About a half a day. And then you're on to the next really hard thing.
Hard is it to get an app integration into Walmart?
It just depends on the kind of depends on the API what you're trying to build into. Y- in terms of working with them, we you just have to get into the right team and understand, what problem are you solving? Why does it make sense for a retailer to solve that problem? How does it solve a problem for their customer base? And I think, at the time when we approached them, especially during COVID, and you know, the primary shopper at Walmart is a female adult child in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are most likely, caring for an aging parent, buying groceries and meds for an aging parent while buying groceries and picking up pharmacy for their own family and themselves. So it made a lot of sense when we approached them.
Yeah. And yet, plenty of companies would like a partnership like that. And maybe it makes sense on paper, and yet to get it over the line is a whole nother ball game. Am I right?
Yeah, it takes years. When I was, thinking about this last night and having this conversation, one of the biggest challenges for a startup entrepreneur, or I think really any founder, is you feel like you have to hurry, 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 hurry. And I read an interesting book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, recently. It was, you know, these things take so much time. And when you're a startup and you have X amount of, my life, not so much anymore, but it was really counted measures in like months runway. How many months did we have to get to the next milestone? And a lot of these integrations, hence a lot of VCs in the early days said, we're just not even, we do not think you'll ever do this. We will not fund this. Working with Walmart is where startups go to die. That is constantly what I heard. And it was our early investors who really said, don't listen to that. Just, if your gut is to build a better product, and we needed to build a better product that was different from the competition. And so I just kind of tuned them out and we went full steam ahead with getting this done. And I'm glad we did. It was the right thing to do. And it's now, with especially who we're working with now, it's a massive value add for Medicare Advantage plans to have access for their members to get groceries in our platform. So
Yeah. What what you're saying about hurry is sort of stands out as an interesting contrast to you saying that the joy of the Walmart success only lasted like half a day. It's kind of a contrast between like the momentary win versus this long-term perspective. What am I going to be building over the next year, 2, 3 years versus one high moment?
yeah, when you get into this, if I could look back at myself 5 years ago, I think, especially just if you look at the news, and I was just thinking about this too, like, you compare yourself with everyone around you. You compare yourself with all the companies and if it's the cohort you're in, the accelerator you're in, companies on Crunchbase or PitchBook that are starting the same time as you, your competitors. And it's good to compare it's good to have competition. It keeps you moving forward. It keeps you innovating. And you should be thinking 3, 5, 10 years down the road all the time when you're building a business. Like, what is next around the corner? But good things, long-term sustainable businesses, they take time to build. And there was a Fortune article, I think it was Fortune, recently, about just all of these VCs pouring into AI and kind of turning a blind eye to these problems that other companies are solving, long-term sustainable problems that are still here, like a rapidly growing aging population, because they don't want to miss out on the next big thing. And it was just like this with Bitcoin and crypto and machine learning, and it goes back and back and back. And so I would just encourage people starting companies that you really need to buckle up and get ready. One, I always say you got to get ready to eat nails, because that's what it's like to start a company. It's like eating nails every day for breakfast. And two, This is something that's probably going to be, if you're lucky, three. If you're one of those quick exits, wonderful, 3 years. But I would look at, I'm going to be doing this for 5, 7, 10 years of
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the actual valleys, hopefully not a valley of death, but valley nonetheless. So the times when you felt like it's getting a little dark over here and I'm not sure if I can do this. What were a couple of those moments that kind of stand out for you?
Well, I have a unique story in the fact that I had, you know, two interesting, two interesting things kind of happen in this is, um, you know, from a personal perspective, I had to go through a very tough season of life. Um, in I became a mom. I became a new mom, a single mom, and I had to, I had just raised around the year prior. We had launched an integration with a very large retailer across the country. I had to raise another round, and so I just had Avanlee Care was like a toddler, and then I was going to be a mom. And I just remember, in that season, it was a dark season, and I just remember it was very, very hard. Uh, I would say the last 2 years were very tough. And I remember being in New York, just in my apartment, laying in my bed with a 6-month old, thinking, how am I going to do this? And um, those were some dark times.
It can be a dark
But
time. That's a dark time for any parent with a crying 6 month old, let alone this business where people rely on you and investors have invested in you.
yeah, I mean, um, I could write a book about some of the things that people have said to me, very wildly inappropriate things. I, I had an investor that, you know, thought maybe I should step down as CEO if I was going to be doing this and uh, being having like a newborn, which was really, really tough to hear.
During that time, how transparent did you feel like you could be with team, investors, advisors about how challenging of a time that was? Or as a single mom, as a woman, did you feel like you had to really put on this real layer of extra confidence?
Well, the unique thing about this business, and it's a couple investors are coming in right now in this round, and what they have both said is you have such a eclectic group, you have such an eclectic board. These people, you guys are like the odd men out. It's just, but you work so well together, and I would not have made it if it wasn't for our board, if it wasn't for the investors early who saw my situation, actually, you know, took sympathized with what was happening, but also too the founding team of Avanlee Care who rallied around me as well. My co-founder really stepped up. Our whole team stepped up during that season because I wasn't able to give 110% to this business like I typically was. And so we just made it work, but it made us grow as a company and also realize, you know, everything didn't need to, I couldn't be doing everything. And it allowed other people to move into positions that they needed to move into to make this ship run better, faster, and more efficiently. And that's really what my kind of personal pain, it forced the company to grow and mature into what I think the company really needed to mature into. But if it was not for our board and my co-founder, I don't think that I don't think we would have made it.
How did that tough period, that laying on the bed, the 6 month old baby, not sure how you're going to go forward. How did going through a valley like that actually make you and the company better off? Or maybe it didn't. Maybe you just survived that by the skin of your teeth. But are there ways in which you feel like that actually made you stronger?
I do think I survived it by the skin of my teeth. Um, I, as
Well,
a per-
both can be true, I suppose.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I think it too as but as a person, you, re- it's like these shows come out on the CEO of, Uber, Travis, the guy that founded it, and I know a lot of our investors have invested in these companies, and they have these shows come out where they just kind of become these maniacs, and I think to myself, when you don't have kids, do you become that if if you are given the sun, the moon, and the stars and everything on a golden platter, success and power and money? Like, I think maybe it's easier to become that. And with kids, especially my son, it it was just like something in me needed to change, and whatever that change whatever that change was, it happened. And I think that having my son Adam made me a better CEO. At least that's what my co-founder and our team said. Um, Constantly do tell me that I'm a better CEO, and I think I also can relate to the problem that we're solving as a company. In the world of, we're trying to make the lives of those who are caring for other people easier and better. So I feel like I have probably just become more relatable to people. I always want to be relatable to people. Uh, or at least feel like people can, always approach me no matter what season of life I'm in. So I think that that's how it made me a better CEO, founder, person.
Have you ever had a chance, or maybe in the last year or two, have you ever had a chance to mentor a woman who maybe is going through something similar, or talk to a founder who's also a new mother? If so, what are those conversations like?
I've had a lot of conversations with some women here in Manhattan who want to start companies. And Esther always says this when she speaks.
Esther Dyson,
Esther,
your
yeah,
investor.
Esther Dyson, our chairman and investor, whom I'm really close with, and she's really poured a lot into my life. And you know, sometimes she says, if you're just she always asks a question before she speaks. Who here wants to be a CEO? And like, some people will raise their hand, and she goes, then you shouldn't be trying to start a company. The CEO is the hardest job, and when you um, you know are a new mom or wanting to have kids, I am not going to lie, it is very tough to juggle both unless you have a very large support system like I do. I was able to have my mother essentially live with us and help me raise Adam so I could do this. Had my mom not done that, we would not be here. And so it's and then, like, as a mom, these children come from you. You want to be around them. At least I hope you want to be around your kids when you have kids, or you should second guess having kids. I want to be around Adam. And so I just encourage women, if you're going to do this, it's very hard. It's going to take a long time. Um, and if you're going to start a company, it really needs, in my opinion, it needs to be ingrained in your DNA. I believe that this is what I was am supposed to be doing, meant to do, and it's got to be something that you live and breathe every day.
Yeah. I was just thinking about your son, thinking about, uh, Lord willing, if everything goes as planned, one day perhaps he will be caring for you using the same sort of tools. Many, many, many decades from now. But the idea that you're building tools that can be useful for literally every family, even your own. You just mentioned your own mother, who was herself a caregiver for your grandmother. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And so these tools, they are just incredibly personal, um, things you can use, your son can use, your mother can use, that will you'll all everyone can benefit from it. Where do you see all this going? Obviously, we haven't talked about the Mark Cuban Cost Plus, just your relationship with them, and sort of some of those other inroads that you've had. But where's this technology going 5 years from now?
We're in an interesting time in history, especially everything that's going on in this country. But I'm sure everyone has said that every like 25 years. Like, in such an interesting time in history. Healthcare is so expensive in the United States. It's also very expensive to end of life care is very expensive. It's very expensive to go to long-term care facilities. Um, so I believe that people are, especially big healthcare systems, corporations, they're going to really have to, and they are turning their head to technology, technology that allows people to stay at home as long as possible. People want to stay at home as long as possible, but integrating in, if we have 54 million unpaid caregivers in this country, providing care, doing the work of a paid caregiver, and if reimbursements become tight, it's going to be very tough for the healthcare systems to deploy the people to do the work that they need to do. Family caregivers, the adult children, they're really the backbone with nurses of the American healthcare system. And so, how do we leverage them and put them in the picture in a way that lowers costs, improves overall patient outcomes, and allows for people to age at home longer? So what I think is going to happen in the next 5 years, personally for us, is as we continue to move and work with these health plans, I also see a massive opportunity on the hospital system side too, with the providers, and just kind of encompassing all of that, to change the way that healthcare is delivered with the family and the caregivers in mind. That's what I hope to solve over the next 5 to 10 years, that we'd look back and there would just be a new way of how healthcare is delivered for the seniors with the family integrated into that.
I love it. I love it. Well, it's going to be exciting to see you do that. Um, and I know the company is growing and evolving, and so we'll be watching everything that you do. A final question, just kind of closing out on this idea of honesty and vulnerability. What's a word of advice you might give to a younger founder who is struggling in that area, whether to really open up about the valleys that they're going through, that this is really hard for them, and they're really putting on like a bit of a false exterior to show overconfidence to their team and to their board, and there's a real disconnect. So, kind of, how would you counsel someone going through that?
Yeah, two things. One, in our investor updates, I started saying, here's what went wrong, and this is what we didn't get right over the last quarter or a couple quarters. Um, because then if you have, good investors, they'll say, how can we help you here? You should, not every update is going to be rainbows and butterflies. So just be very open about what you can't seem to get right. Be very honest. And then two, as a new founder or just entrepreneur, or just, I think this is a good principle in life. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I'll say that again. Comparison is the thief of joy. Just stay focused on what you are trying to build and solve, and do it really well. And don't look to what other people are doing, because it really makes it challenging for you. So
I love
stay
it. I love
focused.
it. It's a great final word. Avanlee, I appreciate you taking the time with me, opening up about the tough stuff, as well as the great successes that Avanlee Care has had. We will be rooting for you and watching your progress over the next year plus.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Be well.